Spend so much time down on my knees.
First Kings chapter 17, and you find this interesting story that Elijah was staying in the house of the widow of Zarephath, and this woman had already seen the goodness of God, and she had only a handful of flour and a little oil left, and she was preparing to eat her last meal with her son and then die. But God sent Elijah, and you know the story. By the word of the Lord, her flour did not run out and her oil did not fail, and every day, she saw a miracle in her kitchen, and every meal became a proof that God was sustaining her. But something strange happened. Her son became sick. The sickness became very severe, and the Bible says that there was no breath in him, and the child died. Now, if we were the widow, we'll probably ask, Lord, why now? Why, after you've sent the prophet to me, after you've provided food, after you gave me hope, after you rescued me from famine, and then my son dies in my arms? You know how we can talk when this kind of thing happens. If we were the widow, I'm sure it's going to be way different. And I know that truly, sometimes life feels like that. God opens one door and another battle begins, and God gives you provision, and then pain appears somewhere. God answers one prayer, and then another crisis knocks at your door. And in those moments, we're tempted to say, this is the worst time for this to happen. But I want you to realize that the widow's son died while Elijah was in proximity. And at first, I get it. It looked like bad timing. But from heaven's perspective, it was mercy. Because if the boy had died before Elijah arrived, then who would have carried him to the upper room? And if the crisis had happened when the prophet was far away, who would have stretched himself upon the child and cried out to God? And if the death had entered when there was no vessel of prayer present, what would she have done? And so you find in this story that what looked like bad timing was actually divine positioning. That sometimes God's kindness is not that the crisis never came. Sometimes God's kindness is that when the crisis came, there was help near you. And that is something we've got to appreciate about divine timing. Because we often judge timing by comfort, and God judges timing by purpose. We look at how it felt, and God is looking beyond how it felt to showing us what grace has already positioned around us. And so you may be saying to yourself today that this is the worst time for this to happen. But maybe heaven is saying that this is the safest time for this to happen, because the help that you need is right now in your house. It's right now within proximity. And friends, I know that God doesn't always prevent the storm. But he makes sure that you're not alone in it. I know that God doesn't always stop the battle, but he gives you strength. I know that God doesn't always remove the problem immediately, but he gives you wisdom, covering, grace, counsel, even resurrection power within reach. And whether you like it or not, or believe it or not, that's still the kindness of God. So the widow saw death, but Elijah saw an opportunity to cry to God. And the widow saw her loss, but God knew that there was a testimony coming after this. And friends, I need you to realize that God's timing is perfect. And sometimes the proof of God's mercy is not the absence of crisis. It's that there is the presence of help within. And so ask yourself today, what am I going through that just feels like, well, God, I don't mind going through this, but I think this is a bad time. And I want you to look beyond it and see what God has provided already. Because sometimes God's mercy is not that trouble never came. It's that trouble came while there was help within reach. And guess what? The Lord is your very present help in time of trouble. Have a blessed day, friends.